This was a big song for me, and I knew it from the moment I finished it. Before I recorded a demo, before I played it with the other guys, I knew it was important, at least to me. I was sitting in my living room in 2008, and I finished the last thing I needed, the pre-chorus. I recorded that pre-chorus into a little digital dictaphone, knew the song was done, and went out and got drunk for 3 weeks straight. I was a drunk looking for an excuse to get on one, and this seemed as good as any. Sitting in the bar, I could turn to my friends and tell them I'd done it, I'd written a hit, even if that song never got me where I was hoping to go. Also, if I needed another excuse to drink, which I definitely did not, there was always the fact that, at this point, I'd been working on this song for 7 years. In 2001, at the age of 21, I got my own bedroom for the first time in my life. For 8 months, my junior year of college, I had a room in the dorms where I could shut the door, lock it, and no one could come in. These 8 months were the first and actually the last time I would have this option until I was almost 30 years old. I grew up sharing a room with my little brother, and later, after college, I lived in a pantry, a closet, some sketchy lofts, and a little bed at the foot of a Polish girl's bed, but nothing with a lockable door, nothing to call my own. So I took advantage of the private room, masturbated a lot, and recorded a ton of music. It was an old rickety building in Boston with almost no insulation for heat or sound. This really beautiful girl lived right next to me. We shared a wall with a door that we weren't supposed to open, but sound easily floated under. I would record all day and all night. She listened to me squawk out harmonies at 1 a.m. and never complained. I rarely heard her talk at all. Occasionally, I'd see her moving down the hallway like a beautiful ghost, silent, avoiding all the weirdos on our floor. I had been making indie rock songs, emulating stuff I'd heard from K Records and things like that. I was genuinely a shy guy, so I related to the vibe. Actually, strangely, I didn't realize I was shy back then. I thought I was gregarious because I could be wild when I was surrounded by my friends, and I loved meeting new people. I still do. There's a lyric in a song on my first album that goes, "I've been on the road from the east to the west, and the people I've not met are the ones I like best." People have taken this to mean that I don't like my friends, but it's actually about how much I love meeting new people. But in 2001, I was a loner most of the time, heavily in my own head, and I had no one to play music with in Boston. I made plans to start a band with a guy I'd grown up with in Vermont, Kyle Thomas, most known for his musical project King Tuff. And even in 2001, King Tuff was already going. There was a cassette tape floating around Brattleboro, Vermont, on which Kyle had played all the instruments. It had a Bell and Sebastian meets the Smiths meets Billy Bragg sound, and he had named it King Tuff.
As the sun ever shone so brightly, that it blackened your eyes.
But he didn't have any guys to play with either, I guess, so we came up with a band that we would have together, and we named it The Curl. I wrote the chorus to Messin Up My Mind while waiting for Kyle to show up for our first practice, which was to take place in my dorm room. The bus from Vermont to Boston had been delayed for a couple of hours. I didn't know this because I had no phone, no cell phone or landline. I can't even remember how Kyle was to get in touch with me once he reached my dorm. In any case, I was stuck in my room waiting for a couple of hours, and in that time, I wrote the first Curl song titled Love Struck Baby, which featured the identical chorus to Messin Up My Mind.
Your love struck baby, can you find a lovesick passion? You really struck my
It should be noted now that 2001 was the year that brought us the first Strokes record, and it was a big influence on me and Kyle. It steered me away from those indie bands and put the Nuggets compilations in my hand. At the time, Kyle worked in a record store in Brattleboro named Meridian's Music, the store where I bought my first Minor Threat album and first copy of Comet Bus. I remember strolling into the record store with Kyle on one of his days off. His coworker had put "Is This It" on the new release stand. We asked him what it was, and he said, "Your new favorite record," and he was right. You can clearly hear the Strokes in Kyle's lead guitar lines on Love Struck Baby, and more so, in the distortion I put on the vocals.
Your love struck baby, can you find your lovesick lover from behind?
What's most strange to me listening back to this song is that I hadn't yet learned about reverb. The vocals are completely dry because I didn't understand at this point how reverb fit into recording, the way it glued everything together. Love Struck Baby was written before Kyle arrived at my dorm room and recorded before we went to a party that night. Kyle played those lead guitar lines, guitar amp at top volume, while the beautiful girl hid in her room next door. The Curl recorded our only album that spring in a studio run by one of the students at my school. He spent 2 weeks recording our record and asked for only $300 as compensation, which I told him I would give him later, and never did. We then left on a tour for which we had booked no shows. We would just show up in a town where we knew somebody and hang around, sometimes for over a week, until someone let us on a bill. It was actually a pretty successful way to tour if you've got a lot of time on your hands. Love Struck Baby didn't make it on the Curl record. I can't recall why. It was probably one of my better songs at the time. We were in a situation, which I've been in a couple times, where the band has two songwriters that are competing for space on the record and getting in each other's way. I don't know, but I feel like it might have had something to do with that. The Curl disbanded after the one tour. In fact, following a show in Eugene, Oregon, Kyle and I drove back across the country hardly speaking to each other. The one thing I remember about that trip home was stopping off in Omaha to visit the Saddle Creek record store. They were closed when we arrived, so we just poked around town for a while and decided to sleep in our car in the parking lot of the local college. My younger brother was on tour with us, playing bass occasionally. I guess he'd had enough of me and Kyle's bickering, so that night he took his sleeping bag and laid out in an empty shack he found in the middle of campus. When he woke, he was surrounded by rabbits. Apparently the school had pet rabbits and the shack was some kind of bunny hut. Students, walking to class in the morning, books under their arm, saw my brother emerge from the rabbit shack in his underwear, hay stuck in his hair and pellets on his back. That about sums up the luck of the Curl. I spent the next years making a number of bedroom recordings and later playing lead guitar in a band called The Wait, and later still playing in the King Tuff touring band. I always remembered the chorus to Love Struck Baby and pulled it out to fiddle with it from time to time, trying to improve the verses. I've never been shy about touching up songs. Many of my tunes have appeared on multiple albums with slight to major changes, but it took me years to find something I liked for that song. While I don't remember actually writing the melody for the verses, I do remember, just after locking it down, I immediately felt a lot of pressure to write a good pre-chorus. I could already tell this was a song I was really excited about. I struggled for a number of hours, tooling around on the guitar and recording endless possibilities into my dictaphone. When nothing worked, I turned to listening to some of my favorite songs for inspiration. In fact, I ended up listening to what I believe to be the greatest single song ever written, Waterloo Sunset by the Kinks. Now, maybe this isn't something a person is supposed to fill you in on, but I'm going to tell you anyway. The pre-chorus to Messin Up My Mind very closely resembles the pre-chorus to Waterloo Sunset. I don't know if anyone would ever find it on their own, but that's what I hear. But I don't feel afraid, 'cause I know you were my own. It's basically a lift of that lovely Kinks melody. Sometimes that's just how you get a song done. One of my great goals in life is to write a song that every part could be a chorus. Come and Get Your Love by Redbone is a song that I would put in this category. The nice thing about the pre-chorus to Messing Up My Mind is, on first listen, it could be confused for a chorus. It has a tight, repetitive hook. Then, just when you think the chorus is over, the actual chorus kicks in. A blast of excitement. A fine excuse for me to stay at the bar till close and then come back just when they open. Not long after completing Messing Up My Mind, I began working on the album that would become the first Fletcher C. Johnson record, It Rained Something Wicked. Once again, Messing Up My Mind was not included in the songs on that record, and once again, I can't remember why. It wouldn't come into play until a couple years later. At the completion of It Rained Something Wicked, the Fletcher C. Johnson band consisted of only me and drummer Tom O'Brien. We spent a couple years touring with just the two of us. This was particularly difficult because Tommy had lost his driver's license, so legally, I was the only driver. Tommy had his driver's license taken away after drunkenly seeing an Arby's that caught his eye on the other side of a 6-lane road. He jumped a median to get to the drive-thru, picked up some food, then jumped the median again to get back in the original lane he was traveling in. Strangely, this hadn't even been his downfall. Moments after jumping the median for the second time, he reached a left turn he needed to take and failed to put on his blinker. Failure to use turn signal were the words written on the police report. No mention of Arby's. After 4 tours, we began recording our second record, and Messing Up My Mind was finally right at the top of the recording session. As we came closer to finishing the album, though, I became more and more nervous. We hadn't had any luck getting the It Rained Something Wicked record released on a label. 2010 was deep in the heart of the record industry crash. My friend Andy McGrath, an employee of ATO Records and a music business genius, had confidently brought our album to a couple different labels. He said he was 100% sure this album would be in demand. Then, a month later, he returned distraught and defeated. We spent the next 2 years touring with homemade CDRs of the first record. In what at the time I believed to be an intelligent business move, I wrote, "From the upcoming album It Rained Something Wicked" on the back of each one. I thought this would convince potential record labels that this album was still unreleased, still available to them if they wanted to scoop it up. Of course, at the same time, they were clearly holding a self-released copy in their hand. But my luck would turn. In 2012, Andy again approached me and asked if I had any new music. He had quit ATO and was working at a music production agency named Black Iris. They had some success releasing 7-inch singles of bands they enjoyed, most notably the early Best Coast song When I'm With You. I jumped at the opportunity. Believing that this might be the only label to ever release my music, I gave them the 2 catchiest songs from my recently finished album, both Messing Up My Mind and, as a B-side, Lost My Head. What I didn't take into account was that a month later, I would receive a call from Sean and Lee of Burger Records. They let me know that Kyle Thomas had slipped them the demos from my new album and were asking if Burger could release it. I was overjoyed, but unfortunately, I had just given away both the songs I planned on using as singles. Still, Black Iris treated me well. On top of producing a couple hundred 7-inches and allowing me to hear Messing Up My Mind played over the speakers in a Forever 21, they also gave us $1,500 to record a music video. My director friend Rob Sousey said he would produce it for free if I used the money to rent a professional camera and a couple good lights. I wrote a script that I described as a live-action Looney Tunes cartoon. We built some props, and then we snuck into the bar I worked at just after last call at 4 a.m. My brother came in to man the lights, and Rob got a couple girls that we dressed up like the Ronettes in space, which I guess is actually kind of what the Ronettes already look like. The bar opened back up at 2 p.m., so we hustled through the night, got the thing shot, and cleared out before my boss noticed we were there. I remember walking into the Black Iris office with the finished video and a stack of receipts indicating that I'd spent $1,463 of the allotted $1,500. I was going through each receipt, explaining their significance, when the company's owner, Darren, put up his hand and stopped me. He shook his head, pulled out a binder, and wrote me a check for $1,500. That's $37 profit, baby. You've been listening to episode 6 of Listening to Fletcher C. Johnson. I'm Fletcher C. Johnson. We are 1 week away from the release of the Are You Feeling It album. Woo!
New rock.
I tried to set it up so that anyone who pre-ordered the album from iTunes got one song that they could listen to immediately as a cool incentive. But I did something wrong, and as a result, I accidentally released one song 2 weeks early.
New rock.
Oops. So you can buy that song now. And while you're over there buying it, slap that pre-order button.
New rock.
Slap it for the whole album.
New rock.
This Wednesday, the 9th, check Flood Magazine's website for the premiere of my new music video.
World premiere video.
People loved my signature hip spin in the Wilder Than Me video, so there was a lot of pressure to follow it up with something hot. And the only thing hotter than pelvic gyration,
the essence of rock and roll,
is magic. I'll leave your mind to wander on that one. Tour news. The East Coast leg of the Acoustic Living Room Tour is booked and will begin on October 21st in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. This is 2 weeks away from now. Check my Instagram for a complete list of cities I'll be visiting on this first leg of the tour. Midwest, West Coast, Texas, I have not forgotten about you.
Yes, you.
There will be a second leg of the acoustic living room tour coming this spring, and that will take me coast to coast. So keep sending in offers if you have a living room that you would like me to rock. Record release show in my hometown of Brooklyn, New York.
Thanks for coming out.
On Friday, October 18th at Union Pool. It's a dual record release show with our friends Unknown Sender. I'm excited to say that their album is being released by my friends at Kernel Records.
Everything alternative.
For next week's episode, I have a short, sweet love song. I can't wait for you to hear the album. I can't wait for you to see the video. I can't wait to play your living room. This is an exciting time for me. Listening to Fletcher C. Johnson was written by me and produced by myself and James Ellis at Public Announcement. Thanks for listening.